When I say secondary market economy, what do you think of? Cars? Cameras? Houses? What about clothes? There's always been a resale market for clothing. Nowadays, however, this market is bigger than ever. So big that the clothing resale economy is split into two strains in a sense. There's the normal secondary market, where more expensive things are sold secondhand for a bargain price. Somewhat like at Value Village, where you can find donated clothing for less, but also with high-end clothing, making it more accessible. From here forward, I'll be referring to this as the second-hand market. The second strain is a little more interesting and a whole lot more unique. The market I'll be referring to as the resale market. This market, fueled by hype, is the purchasing of limited, exclusive, and rare clothing at a retail price, or simply a low price, and flipping it to make a little or a lot. No brand exemplifies this market quite like New York City's very own Supreme. Supreme first opened its doors in Soho in 1994. Back then, it was a somewhat known brand among skater culture. It remained this way until it blew up. The Supreme logo. Big, bold, rectangular, well known to most Supreme fans as the box logo. A $40 t-shirt with a Supreme box logo on it can easily fetch a couple $100 brand new. If you're swift enough at drop time, you might be able to order the newest hyped Supreme item and flip it for a quick profit. For those living in a city with a Supreme store, these cities being, in the Americas at least, New York City and Los Angeles, you can line up for the drop. But it won't be a short line. For a drop with a more hyped item, you could have to be there a day or more in advance just to get the one item you want. If you plan on getting anything at all, you'll want to line up at least a few hours before the store opens its doors. If there's something you want especially from one drop, you may be able to handle a few hours wait if it's a less hyped item. If you can't handle it, you're going to want to buy it resale. For a full-time reseller, every Wednesday night could be spent on Lafayette, waiting for the skate shop to open up on Thursday morning. What's it like doing this? Is it worth it? Take a look at this excerpt from Complex's documentary, Sold Out.
The way people get their hands on Supreme is no longer limited to buying straight from the brand. That doesn't necessarily mean that consumers are in a better position than before. Buyers have more options of where to buy Supreme, but these middlemen charge a serious markup.
Do you like waiting in line or no?
I don't, but I don't want to pay resale.
So you're a reseller?
Yeah.
And how much stuff did you pick up?
3 sets of everything.
Yo, there are people that like make their fucking living off of this.
You know, if you wanted it that bad, you'd have been here before me.
I guess it's all about who's wearing it. You could have somebody that doesn't know anything about the brand that is willing to wait in line or pay double for it just so that they can be a part of it. But there's also people that really just love the brand, love the quality, and love the way the clothes look on them, and are not really interested in making so much of a statement as staying consistent to their style.
I don't think resellers are necessarily a good or a bad thing, but they are a byproduct of a culture fueled by the need to sort of have one thing that not necessarily everybody else has, and also wanting to like flex on other people because you have something that they don't necessarily have or can't get. And that sort of helps create the cachet of where Supreme is at today.
What is so special about this drop?
The money you're about to make. Like,
Are you reselling?
hell yeah, what the fuck? Do I look like a herb right now?
The resale prices of rare Supreme products can be jacked up as high as 1,200% above the original cost. Supreme's graphic tees usually run you between $36 to $44. But items like the Supreme Japan Snakeskin Box logo tee will resell for as much as $550. The Kermit the Frog tee, $600.
Are you reselling any of this?
Oh yeah, I got 3 people online. This is for me. The first set is for me. I go in for me, but I got 3 kids online that I pay to come out here, and all that's for the resale. That's for y'all, so you know.
How much are you going to resell from this drop?
I've already sold 2 shirts, pre-sold them on eBay for $250 a pop.
And how much retail were they?
$44.
Do you think they're worth that much?
Nowhere near. But I mean, you know, at the end of the day, it's worth whatever a fool's willing to pay for it. So, you know.
Back up! Back up! Fellas, yo, you gotta get inside the car!
New Supreme products always create a massive level of anticipation. But the most hyped release in the brand's history was set for April 4th, 2014, when it collaborated with Nike on the Foamposite 1. Hundreds of people showed up the night before, creating a frenzied crowd that flooded the Soho streets around Supreme's New York shop. The hopeful shoppers caused so much commotion, the NYPD canceled the release.
So what makes the wait worth it? What's worth the money? How can a reseller know what to buy to make money? We asked Reddit streetwear community for some ideas. User Duck Yusaka said, one word, hype. Now what's hype? Hype is when everyone wants the item and everyone knows the item. If you have this item, people who know it are going to be jealous. Now what makes an item hyped? Supreme is made in very limited quantities and is made especially hard to get by the sheer masses of people just trying to get themselves something. Being able to access the web storefront before everything's sold out can be difficult with some drops, let alone buying any especially hyped piece. Furthermore, some people try and use bots to instantly buy things when the Supreme items drop. A bot will instantly select the item, fill out your order form, and hopefully complete the order so that you skip the line essentially. However, Supreme has lately been cracking down on these, cancelling many orders that they suspect are from bots. Difficulty to obtain is not everything with Supreme hype though. Supreme collaborations are especially popular as they yield the most interesting designs and are often worth the most. A collaboration is when the brand works with another brand to design a piece together. For instance, the Supreme Jordan 5 shoes sold out in seconds. Supreme and Bathing Ape box logo tee? Very hard to find, and if you do, it's going to be no cheap purchase. Supreme and Comme des Garçons box logo hoodie? Same situation. Supreme Motion logo Vans? Sold out right away, and Supreme collaborates with Vans at least once a year. You get the picture. Collaborations are hyped. And the thing that sets Supreme apart from other clothing brands is their exclusivity. With some minor exceptions, Supreme never makes anything twice. This might be normal at a more high-end fashion house, but for a skate brand selling their shirts for $40, this is fairly unique. If they produce a piece and it doesn't sell well, they don't make it again. But if they produce a piece and it does sell well, they don't make it again. This means that if you own a Supreme t-shirt with a specific graphic on it, or a Supreme hat, that's part of the one and only batch of them. This makes the brand a rarity. We asked Reddit what made a Supreme piece worth more to a reseller, and they delivered. User Pirovanov said,
Supreme used to have artists that were kind of billboards. Tyler the Creator is a good example. Then they became world famous. Supreme is the anti-fashion fashion brand. Their pieces aren't really trendy with modern cuts and such. The prices are somewhat reasonable. It's a fair price for a hoodie. They haven't really grown up much as a brand. There are many pieces that haven't changed much, like their famous box logo. That may be also because they are a skateboard brand and evolved their style after the skate culture. This is their marketing. They stay somewhat true to what they are, and this is what brought Supreme to the fashion world. Nowadays, everybody knows the brand, from kids to adults. Almost anyone that I know and is a bit into fashion has at least a Supreme piece. Resellers buy what is easy to sell, coveted pieces. The price is somewhat logical. Black and white usually are worth more than other colors. Box logo and collabs too. So for example, a reseller would prefer a white box logo instead of a blue polo without the logo. They buy what everybody wants, so the demand is higher. If there's big Supreme writing on it, it may be easier to flip. That's kind of what sets the prices as far as I know.
Supreme makes a statement. They have a "we don't care" attitude, and you want people to know you like this statement. That's why things that say Supreme on them are the most desired. If you want people to know that you're wearing Supreme, how better to do it than to have it say Supreme across the chest. The box logo above all. The box logo is simple, cool, known well, parodied, and spun off countless times. The world knows the box logo. But what can build hype like no other? An item can go from a sideline piece, something that sat in stores, to incredibly popular in a day. How does this happen? A celebrity uses it. This exists across everything. Celebrity-endorsed cookware, celebrity-endorsed cars, celebrity-endorsed anything. Of course, it holds true for clothing. When a popular artist wears something, and let's be honest, Kanye is the front runner of this, it gains a lot of hype, especially things designed by popular artists or any celebrity. Kanye's shoes resell starting at least $1,000 and only go up from there. Something that can abruptly drive the market up is seeing an item on a celebrity. This is a phenomenon that's fairly distinct from any other economy. One single thing can push the value of an item or an entire brand heavily. English skate company Palace became giant in the resale scene this year, brought up by the surge of popularity in the grime music scene. Since then, rappers like Freddie Gibbs and Kanye himself have been seen in the brand. Whether economy has any driving factors at work that are this influential, setting this specific resale market worlds apart from any other resale market, and even more so from any other economic structure. We've established that celebrities can drive demand for Supreme. What about other clothes?
Her pistol go. Her pistol go. I said her pistol go. Cause she a fashion killer and I'm a trendy nigga. I said her pistol go.
Celebrities do a big part in setting trends. This makes some high fashion labels more in demand and more sellable. Take for example Rick Owens, the American fashion designer known for his drapey, textured, outside-the-box design. Not cheap. So you see your favorite fashion icon in a Rick tee and decide you want one for yourself. You go on fashion retailers Sense and Barney's, but your wallet just can't muster it. What do? If you want your clothing to be real, you buy a previously loved garment. Where? eBay? Kijiji? Maybe. What if I told you there's an online market made specifically for people selling men's designer clothing directly out of their wardrobes? Around 2 years ago, Aaron Gupta founded Grail.com after finding shopping on online forums like Reddit to be very inaccessible. Since then, it has blown up. Now you can find anything from Gosha Rubchinsky's headbands to rare Supreme pieces to the very rare Rick tee you're looking for. Everything you see here is being sold by normal people, selling out their wardrobe. This isn't Amazon, it isn't storefronts. For some posts, you make an offer. For some, you pay the fixed price. You then complete the transaction with PayPal and the seller ships off. Simple.
There's demand for these second-hand clothes. Where does the supply come from? Well, there's a few means of supply. Have you ever had a shirt that you loved? You saved it for the most special of occasions. You just kept it in great condition because it was your favorite shirt. But one day, you look at it and you decide, this shirt's not for you anymore. It's nice, but it's not you. So, if it's a shirt you bought at the Gap, you might shelf it forever, just keep it in the closet, you might donate it, or you might throw it out. But if it's a hyped piece, either from an in-favor designer or simply from a hype brand like Supreme, you can get some to a lot of your money back. If you bought the Rick Owens Twisted Double Layer for retail, which is $485 at Barney's, you can get an easy $200 for it on Grailed, and that's if you want a quick sale. If you list it a bit higher, you may get that money, but it may take a little while longer. What you can get for a second-hand item depends on a few things. As with any second-hand thing, condition matters. But beyond that, what's hyped determines what's going to sell for what. Some designers fall out of favor. Currently, Rick Owens is fairly popular. Rick Owens boots can easily sell for over half of retail, and that's even if they're fairly used. It's supply and demand. Grailed is also used for selling brand new clothing. Supreme resellers that we mentioned earlier often use it as a marketplace for selling the newest Supreme drop worldwide, and it's also used for selling rarer Supreme pieces. However, those resellers do often use Facebook groups or Instagram pages to sell their items instead. Supreme Toronto is Toronto's most prolific resale group. When buying high-end clothes, the resale price can be a big consideration. Rick Owens aficionado Ricky Trung said that he only buys garments he can make money on, or at least get a fair bit back. Some people use Yahoo Japan or a comparable international sales service to buy brand new or lightly used designer clothing, which is often cheaper in Japan. They'll wear it, and then they can sell it for more than they paid for it, even though they've gotten a wear or two out of it. Importing goods is a wonderful thing. Now, when asked if it's easy to get into second-hand clothing sale, Trung stated that it was anything but. As a means of income, you won't make much money without putting in a lot of time. There's not much money in selling older designer clothing, though flipping a piece to get some of what you paid back can ease the mind regarding the price of, say, your $1,000 Rick Owens Ramon shoes. Not to mention, selling and buying items second-hand, it's a fair bit less impactful environmentally speaking than buying everything brand new. It keeps items in circulation and thus reduces the demand for brand new items. As far as things with money in them, Supreme is a top contender. As opposed to a vintage SLP jacket or a rare Ricoh sweater, Supreme is fairly popular. Both finding a buyer and finding a seller is easy, since often a Supreme buyer won't be too concerned about specifically what they're buying. The t-shirt could have anything on it. They just want Supreme. There's in fact so much money in Supreme, stores can open just to resell it. Toronto's own frontrunner in this business is Essential Toronto, a consignment store focused on selling people's hyped sneakers, Supreme, and other streetwear brands. Essentially, you give your brand new Supreme pieces to Essential, and after verifying that it's in fact real, they'll put it up for sale. When it sells, they'll give you your money after taking a consignment fee. You can visit Essential at the shops at the Aura. The, without a doubt, most known Supreme resale shop among the Supreme community is Unique Hype Collection, a boutique a short distance from the Supreme store in New York. They obtain Supreme for themselves as opposed to consigning it for owners. They often will hire people to wait in line for them for drops to purchase as much as possible. Having a lot of goods available readily is key for hyped items. This business is booming. Its owner, Peter, who declined to allow any information about him to be released to the public, brought in 7 figures a year over the last few years just selling Supreme. Peter's resale isn't limited to Supreme, however. He also owns a trading card shop, a whole other secondary market with driving forces entirely different to hyped clothing. In fact, he recruits his Supreme line waiters at his card shop to buy him more rare garments without blurring the lines between his two resale markets as much. Peter stated that him and other large quantity resellers don't compete on price. The demand for Supreme greatly outweighs the supply. There is little need to offer bargains. Peter said, "If they want to undercut me on price, go ahead. I'll wait until they sell out and then sell them for even more." Stores aside, the fascinating thing about the clothing resale market is its openness to participation. It may not be easy at first, and it certainly may not be easy to make a lot of money on it, but with a bit of time and capital, it can be quite easy to make a little bit of money on the side just flipping clothing. Unlike selling used cars, you don't need a whole lot of space to do it, and the price of operation is minimal outside of obtaining product. You don't really need to advertise your items since there's so much demand for them. With services like Kijiji, eBay, Facebook groups, and especially Grailed, becoming a small-time clothing profiteer is more accessible than ever. The ability to sell directly out of your wardrobe is great. It encourages reuse of clothing, minimizing waste. Rather than going to actively trying to find a buyer, you can simply list whatever you may want to sell on Grailed and then wait for an offer that sounds right. Reducing the work required to put unwanted clothing back in circulation means people will be much more likely to do it, and it allows easier access to the economic world of clothing. You can invest. If you see a brand start to be repped by more and more people, you can buy a few items from this brand as speculation. Take the brand Palace. Just a year ago, shops were still well stocked with all means of clothing bearing their Triferg logo. Now, you'd be lucky to find a single shirt for retail this side of the Atlantic. If you had a few unworn Palace tees sitting around this time in 2015, you've at least doubled your money by now. Take, as another example, the Adidas Nomad shoes. They just released a few short months ago, and at first release they sold a tiny bit over retail in the resale market. Now the original models of this shoe sell for over $600 in the resale market. All in all, the world of clothing resale is like no other. The forces driving demand are unlike those with a standard economy. If a celebrity is seen using oil, oil prices are unlikely to be affected. The supply and demand dynamic is distinctly unique. With resources or even most goods and services, supply is made through steady production and demand is made through steady consumption. Hyped clothing has, generally speaking, no steady production. There's one run of it. The demand can move around based on any number of factors, including celebrity use and simply what's in style at the time. But regardless of the demand, supply doesn't change. Resale economy is somewhat comparable to a mixed economy, in that the economy is controlled partially by the labels participating in the economy. They decide the production size, they decide the retail price, so they decide what's profitable. When a hyped item is bought at retail, take for instance the Box logo t-shirt for $40, it's given to the buyer without the variable and inflated resale price outside of the secondary market. The buyer can then take it for themselves wearing it or introduce it to the secondary market, making a profit. The resale economy is a wonderful and diverse world, and one that changes drastically. A used car with 100,000 kilometers is unlikely to ever spike in price, and the demand isn't really exceeding the supply. All the different driving forces and the varying degrees of accessibility of various markets are fascinating and should certainly be considered for study in any economics class.